Welcome back to my inner sanctum. I'm your hostess, Countess Elizabeth, mistress of the macabre. Although circuses are not as popular as they once were, there is still a level of fun and merriment when going to see the circus. Most people would have a good time watching the shows, maybe feeding the elephants some peanuts. Today's video is about a day at the circus that went horribly wrong, when a performance got out of hand in Hartford, Connecticut, and caused a massive fire. So, let us get our free ticket and sit under the big top so we can explore our grotesque curiosity. In mid-20th century America, a typical circus traveled from town to town by train, performing under a huge canvas, commonly called the Big Top. The Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus was no exception. What made it stand out was that it was the largest circus in the country. Its Big Top could seat 9,000 spectators around its three rings, and the tent's canvas had been coated in 1,800 pounds, or 820 kilograms, of paraffin wax, dissolved in 6,000 gallons, or 23,000 liters of gasoline. This was a common waterproofing method of its time. The circus had been experiencing shortages of personnel and equipment as a result of the United States' involvement in World War II. On August 4th, 1942, a fire had broken out in the menagerie, killing a number of animals. When the circus arrived in Hartford, Connecticut, on July 5th, 1944, the trains were so late that one of the two shows scheduled for that day had been canceled. In circus superstition, missing a show is considered extremely bad luck, and although the July 5th, 1944 evening show ran as planned, many circus employees had been on their guard, half expecting an emergency or a catastrophe. The next day was a Friday. The crowd at the 2:15 afternoon performance was dominated by women and children. The size of the audience that day has never been established with certainty, but the best estimate is about 7,000 people. The fire began with a small flame after the lions performed on the southwest side wall of the tent, while the great Wallendas were performing. Circus band leader Merle Evans was said to have been the first to spot the flames, and immediately directed the band to play The Stars and Stripes Forever, the tune that traditionally signaled distress to all circus personnel. Ringmaster Fred Bradna urged the audience not to panic and leave in an orderly fashion, but the power failed, and he could not be heard. Bradna and the ushers unsuccessfully tried to maintain some order as the panicked crowd tried to flee the Big Top. The only animals in the Big Top at the time were the big cats that had just finished performing when the fire started. The big cats were hoarded through the chutes leading from the performing cages to several cage wagons, and the animals were unharmed except for a few minor burns. Although most spectators were able to escape the fire, many people were caught up in the hysteria. Witnesses said some simply ran around in circles trying to find their loved ones, rather than trying to escape from the burning tent. Some escaped, but ran back inside to look for family members. Others stayed in their seats until it was too late, assuming that the fire would be put out promptly. Because at least two of the exits were blocked by the chutes used to bring the show's big cats in and out of the tent, people trying to escape could not bypass them. The cause of the fire remains unsolved. Investigators at the time believed it was caused by carelessly flicking a cigarette. However, others suspected an arsonist. In 1950, while being investigated on other arson charges, Robert Dale Segee, who was an adolescent at the time of the fire, confessed to starting the blaze. He was never tried for the crime, and later recanted his confession. Because of the paraffin wax waterproofing of the tent, the flames spread rapidly, helped by the wind. The waterproofing indeed protected the tent from rain, but it had been repeatedly shown it was horribly flammable. Most people were badly burned by melting paraffin, which rained down from the roof. The fiery tent collapsed in about 8 minutes, according to eyewitness survivors, trapping hundreds of spectators beneath it. Because of a picture that appeared in several newspapers of a sad clown, Emmett Kelly, holding a water bucket, the event became known as the Day the Clowns Cried. While many people burned to death, many others died as a result of the ensuing chaos. Sources and investigators differ on how many people were killed and injured. Various people and organizations say it was 167, 168 or 169 people, with the 168 figure usually being based on the official tallies, which included a collection of body parts that were listed as a victim. The official account for those injured was 700. The number of actual injuries is believed to be higher than those figures. It is commonly believed that a number of fatalities is higher than the estimates given due to the poorly kept residency records in rural towns. and the fact that some smaller remains were never identified or claimed. Some died from injuries sustained after leaping from the tops of the bleachers in hope that they could escape under the side of the tent, though the method of escape ended up killing more than it saved. Others died after being trampled by other spectators, with some asphyxiating underneath the piles of people who fell over each other. Most of the dead were found in piles, some at least 3 bodies deep, at the most congested exits. A small number of people were found alive at the bottom of these piles, protected by the bodies on top of them when the burning big top ultimately fell down. The best known victim of this circus fire is a young blonde girl wearing a white dress. She is known only as Little Miss 1565, named after the number assigned to her body at the city's makeshift morgue. Oddly well preserved even after her death, her face has arguably become one of the most familiar images of the fire. Her true identity has been a topic of debate and frustration in the Hartford area. She is buried without a name in Hartford's Northwood Cemetery, where a victim memorial also stands. 2 police officers, Sergeant Thomas Barber and Sergeant Edward Lowe, photographed her and took fingerprints, footprints, and dental charts. Despite massive publicity and repeated displays of the famous photograph in nationwide magazines, she was never claimed. Barber and Lowe spent the rest of their lives trying to identify her. They decorated her grave with flowers each Christmas, Memorial Day, and July 4th. After their deaths, a local flower company continued to decorate the grave. In 1991, the body was declared to be that of 8-year-old Eleanor Emily Cook, though Cook's aunt and uncle had examined the body and it did not fit the description they provided. The Connecticut State Police forensic units compared hair samples and determined that they were probably from the same person. The body was exhumed in 1991 and buried next to her brother Edward, who had also died in the fire. One survivor of the fire, Maureen Keegan, discussed her survival story. She was 11 at the time of the fire and had lived on the same road upon which the circus was held. On the day of the event, she was supposed to go to the circus with a neighbor and her daughter. When she went to their house, she had found that they had already left without her. She decided to go to the circus on her own, where she seated herself in the bleachers. She states, "I remember somebody yelling and seeing a big ball of fire near the top of the tent, and the ball of fire just got bigger and bigger. By that time, everyone was panicking. The exit was blocked with the cages that the animals were brought in and out with, and there was a man taking kids and flinging them up and over the cage to get them out. I was sitting up in the bleachers and jumped down. I was 3/4 of the way up. You jumped down and it was all straw underneath. There was a young man, a kid, and he had a pocket knife, and he slit the tent, took my arm, and pulled me out. As she was being pulled out, she grabbed another girl's arm and pulled her out as well. Those who survived carried trauma for decades." 70 years after the fire, Carol Tillman Parrish, who was 6 at the time, said that until this day, "I can smell the stench of human flesh as the blaze consumed its victims." Well, that was truly a grotesque tale. What doesn't make sense to me is that the big top has paraffin wax on the outside, and I guess that was a common weatherproofing method, but paraffin's also what most candles are made out of. So to me it would make sense that it would be highly flammable. I'm just glad this practice of using the paraffin wax phased out. May the souls of those affected by this disaster rest in peace. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe, like, and share if you would also like to keep exploring our grotesque curiosity. We'll meet again in the darkness of the night.